Good morning, everybody, and welcome to InsureTalk17. My name is Nontusugo Mhlungu, and I will be your host for the session. While we are fast approaching the end of the year, but that has not slowed us down here on InsureTalk as we continue to bring you more engaging content and only the best speakers. Today is not going to be any different. We've got a jam-packed lineup in store for you today, with the theme for today's session being future risks. Are we ready? That is the question we're going to be unpacking today. This is the agenda for today. It is appearing on your screen, so this is what you can look forward to. All right, a huge thank you now to our sponsors. Munich Re is our headliner sponsor for today, so a huge thank you to you, as well as our event partners who include Global Choices, the IISA, who have assisted with the accreditation of today's session, as well as Cover Magazine coming in as our media partner. All right, let's not waste any more time and jump right into the session with our very first speaker of the day. She goes by the name of Tasha Bogal. She is the head of Property Treaty at Munich Re and is going to be talking to us today about the insurance of artificial intelligence. Over to you, Tasha.
Thank you very much, Noni, for that very kind introduction. Okay, and a very warm welcome from myself. Today we'll be discussing the insurance of artificial intelligence under the banner of future risks. Are we ready? It is incredibly evident that the pace of technology in the next 5 years can surpass some of our wildest expectations. It is therefore critical that we are top of mind when we think of the digital transformation, such that we are at the forefront in shaping the business of our future, ensuring vertical scale and ultimately succeeding to all stakeholders. This is our ambition at Munich Re, to shape, scale, and succeed. One element of this digital transformation journey begins in the slightly controversial area of artificial intelligence. Over the next 25 minutes, I will be navigating you through what is AI, what are some of the trust issues associated with it, how we address some of these trust issues with insurance, what exactly are we insuring, the benefits, risks, and a few actual use case examples. So to kick us off, what is artificial intelligence? So artificial intelligence enables computers to exhibit human-like intelligence, including learning, planning, reasoning, problem-solving, and decision-making. At the 2019 World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba, and Elon Musk had very opposing views of artificial intelligence and its impact on humanity. Would it be a positive one to human life, or is it actually a threat to our existence? So I think at this point, I'd like you to please populate in the chat. Where are you feeling in terms of your trust levels with AI? With 1 being minimal trust and 10 being full trust. And we will get to that towards the end of our session. Okay, so moving on here, it is anticipated that 78% of people expect AI to disrupt their industry in the next 10 years. This is according to the Accenture report written in 2019. That's a whopping percentage, quite significant here. And on top of that, the paradox here is that 88% of people do not believe, do not have the confidence in the AI-based decisions and outputs. So I guess the next question is, how can we ensure this confidence level is now increased? If we look towards the market, I mean, artificial intelligence will create significantly new risks and new market potentials for us in the future. If you think about it, in 2019, AI investments contributed towards $35.6 billion US. I mean, in comparison to the South African GDP, that's a whopping 7 times our country's GDP. So the value that artificial intelligence is also expected to create is quite significant. If we look at the number of working hours, the productivity generated by AI in 2021, it was sitting at a whopping 6.2 billion man-female hours. Okay, and the business value generated by augmented AI is already present in certain sectors. So we've got it already in our automotive environment. When we look towards some of the Tesla's considerations, we've got finance coming in as the sectors, that healthcare as well. I have an actual use case example later on where we will touch on some of the healthcare changes that artificial intelligence has brought in. So it is already affecting our lives. It is already affecting our industries, although we're kind of in this chaotic middle where people are still testing out the environment and still establishing their level of trust. Okay. So what exactly is it, and how does artificial intelligence work? So if you think about conventional software, we've got developer models here, and it's run by rules-based. You see that the arrows are one way in this. So we set up a certain amount of rules. For example, in the fraud environment, we would say if somebody hits into a black dog close to a university, for example, that could be one of the fraud examples that could be used in setting up these rules. We apply it to the data, and it's a one-way transmission to the program. Now, if we move it towards the next level of learning, the machine learning, here we are given a certain data set as well as its answers. We create a training algorithm for this data, and with this we apply methods of supervised and unsupervised learning. Unsupervised learning refers to images like Google reCAPTCHA to identify how many traffic lights do you actually see. All of that is based on AI. And further to that, we then apply some models, and those models now we move away from our GLMs and we focus it more on random forests to understand the data, as well as utilizing some bootstrapping as well and gradient boosting, just to improve the accuracy of our predictions. And the beauty of this is actually in this backward arrow back to the model. Once we've got our results, we see that this is a continuously retraining environment. And I think more on that will be touched on by my colleague, Alex, in our later session. Okay, so if we move on towards the uncertainty. So I think a lot of the questions that are currently raised is, do we understand this technology well enough? Will the AI perform as predicted? Might there be some kind of biases? We've got some examples in our history. And will I be held responsible if this AI fails? So I think this uncertainty in itself, the insurance industry have been built on this kind of uncertainty. And that is where we come into our near future and now. Okay, so what exactly are we insuring? Well, I put in this quote here, but this quote is every AI buyer at every single company. Their quote is, how can I be sure that the expectations are met, and who will pay if things derail? Okay, so at Munich Re, I have an example here that we haven't actually put in the slides, but let's get us thinking about artificial intelligence. So if we've got, let's say, 4 people sitting in a garage and they're working on a particular program. This program can be like, for example, the television. So with live TV, we have soccer matches, right? And we need to ensure that the cameras that are displaying or broadcasting are not broadcasting toxic content or inappropriate content, and it is appropriately censored. So say for instance, somebody writes an algorithm that is able to detect that when somebody runs onto the pitch without clothes, for example, that it can immediately move to the next camera. What does that save you? Previously, you would have 40 employees sitting and actually monitoring all the cameras that are being broadcasted, such that they note which cameras can be disabled with a switch. It involves human error, right? It also involves a certain kind of delay. Artificial intelligence can come in there and actually improve that environment. And maybe instead of 40 people, you may require 10 people to actually perform the same function. And to that, the guarantees that are then afforded, one could say, is that if it is not switched within a certain time frame, for example, 4 seconds, then there would be a certain fine that would be payable or would be required to be paid by the broadcaster. And in this case here, we as the insurance industry can come in and pay out that fine. So that is just like one example to get our mind thinking about what exactly are we insuring. Okay, so if you think about the various phases for artificial intelligence here and driving the insurance solutions, we've got here the experimental phase, the taking off, and established. So under experimenting, we're looking more at your prototypes, your pilots, and just trying to see if you've got a viable product for somebody that can actually improve the manner in which they are conducting their business. So you start developing this kind of offering. The taking off phase is then, does it really work as it is promised? And in this case here, the products that are available is in respect of these kind of performance guarantees. If you go to a company and say, I've created a program that can switch your cameras within 4 seconds, I mean, you need to have some kind of backing and some kind of guarantee. I think most buyers of these AI products are thinking, well, what will happen if it doesn't work out? And performance guarantees is actually an area where we can really shine in this sector. And then we move on to say, and if it doesn't work, what would be some of my liabilities, the fines that I would have to pay? So if we think about what are some of these benefits and the benefits of insurance. So here, by you providing this kind of guarantee, it allows companies to feel that they've got a quality signal, that you are confident in your output. There's also shorter proof of concept phases. Companies may be more willing to test out your AI if there is this kind of guarantee. There's reduced risks, and also it helps you in securing this kind of return on investment. So this is coming from the tech service provider concept. So, and then we move on to say, okay, these are some of the guarantees as the insurance industry we can contribute towards. Okay, so if you think about the underwriting steps here, we need to ensure that there are multiple opportunities. So there's the discovery phase. We create this kind of aspiration definition, what you hope to achieve. I think more and more with AI, what we need to be answering is how to frame our question better. And I think to that end, AI and some of our machine learning programs allow us to actually frame these questions in a more appropriate manner so that we can make sure the scale. Certain kind of pain point definitions, I think, also helps us in narrowing the question and narrowing out the product offering. We then move on towards the analysis. So similarly, I mean, when we would cover our bridges, we would have engineers. Here in the analysis phase, we have our data scientists, our computer scientists, who are all working together to ensure that the AI system in totality is reviewed in an appropriate manner, and we understand certain kind of risks that exist in this framework. Okay, a little bit about the 6 points of the risk assessment will follow. If we then move on towards the deliverables, then just ensuring that people have the confidence. This is the trust. How do you actually have some kind of management reports if you deem a certain outputs to be outside of the norm of the AI? Does it provide you with this kind of flagging mechanisms so that you can immediately come in and address certain tweaks to the AI if it is required? Then, of course, the quality seal and that formal certification. So with that formal certification, us at Munich Re are also in that environment of providing this kind of quality seal, where we discover and we enter towards this kind of exploratory phase with the AI tech company so that we can provide the certificate. And the elements that we actually then consider in this risk assessment is we look at the reliability of the product. And in this case here, we're really just testing its operation, its robustness, what would be some kind of evasion strategies with it. The security and safety, I mean, of course, IT security, our cyber security environment, and basically also its functional security. So those are the 3 elements considered there. The autonomy and control. So here is basically identifying the distribution of tasks between human and the AI system. the information empowerment of the stakeholders, and again, always control dynamics. Keep filtering through in each of these kinds of risk assessment areas. We move on towards transparency. I mean, if we actually look at some of these models that I've mentioned with the random forests, I think some of the drawbacks that one could say is that it lacks a little bit of the transparency. So I think there we just need to understand that, does this output actually filter in towards the explanation? Is it easy to explain to the users the output, the interpretability for the experts or the users of this platform? And if we move on towards fairness, I think this is the current controversial area when we talk about AI. So if you think about the product, so I mentioned these are the 6 components for the certification of AI. But if we look at the components, what are the insurable components? We speak towards the reliability, and that is providing this kind of performance guarantee. And also in the future, we are also aiming to have this kind of performance guarantee in respect of fairness on these AI platforms, because that has been brought to the spotlight, and I've got some examples a little bit later on. So and the final item is basically the privacy of this information. Okay, so that highlights our 6 risk assessment areas. If we then move on towards what are some of the aspects towards structuring. Okay, so here it's all about the money, the guarantee, the payout. And this, I think the uniqueness of artificial intelligence is it really depends on the buyer of this insurance product, the tech company, to what extent they would like to actually guarantee this payout. So if you say, for example, that your expected performance of your AI as the tech company is that it can switch the cameras within 1 second, then you can say, I can either put it that I provide my guarantee at that level, or I provide my guarantee at 2 or 3 seconds. And if it then breaches that area, that is when insurance comes in. And we can then also define what shall be the appropriate payout. Shall it be 100,000 Rand or 1 million Rand? It all depends on the risk of the tech company who wishes to actually purchase this form of insurance. Okay, and I think what is very critical here is that our previous ideas of a retention ratio is gone, right? Because previously, we used to say if a person comes on board, we would keep them on, or at least an insured would be with you for a period of 3 to 5 years before they find another insurer to actually move their household, their motor, their buildings towards, right? But now with AI, you're insured being the tech company. As this product actually runs through even more data, when it goes into live framework, your retention is actually a lot lower, or the need for insurance reduces over time, such that, I mean, after 2 years or 3 years, the level of confidence that the tech company would have in the AI would have increased to such a level that they may say, this is a risk that I am now willing to keep. So I think that is something that we have to also be mindful of in this environment. Okay, so I mentioned a little bit about these 6 pillars on how we actually do the validation. And with that, we then generate this kind of algorithms, we process it against the data set. There is this retraining environment, and we establish certain kind of user-based tools that can also test this infrastructure. Okay, ultimately, this delivers that kind of quality seal that the buyers of this AI are looking for from the tech service company. Okay. There are, of course, a lot of areas that needs to be addressed from the regulatory environment. Regulation at this point in time still needs to catch up to artificial intelligence. We've got also certain kind of risk mitigating measures in terms of the liability that is given, this buyer-supplier relationship, and this confidentiality associated with its IP. And finally, this quality seal and this brand. So here, the three elements in terms of our offering to the artificial intelligence in environment and our digital transformation for the future is in respect of one being the validation certificate for these AI companies, the insurance being the performance guarantee, and any subsequent liability of the AI. But definitely, this is now the future risk. So with the remaining few minutes that I have, I think it's great to go through some of the failures and also some of our actual cases where we are on risk. Okay, so in terms of the failures here, in 2015, we noted that here there was a robot that in the VW factory that was actually, they were performing some maintenance work there. And this was a new situation for the robot. So it didn't follow its normal path. And hence there was an accident at this car plant and it actually grabbed a worker who unfortunately died from this incident. So, but that is also 6 years ago, right? Then we move on to 2015. Artificial intelligence was used in the hiring process with the likelihood of this person being appointed. Now, we all know the history, the gender disparity that is present, or at least has been present and is present in our employment sector. And here, the artificial intelligence system utilized the data of the previous CVs and how likely they were to actually be employed. And that brought through a sexual gender bias to this particular program. Another one, 2016, we've got the autopilot, Tesla, the fatal crash. 2017 here, we've got when Facebook created their two AI chatbots, actually invented their own language. And that was not being able to be traced by humans. We could not understand what they were communicating. So I think that is really where the controversy starts there. And if I move on to artificial intelligence and how will it transform medical imaging? I mean, at the moment, if you go take a scan, at the moment, the AI is actually used to support diagnosis. So we still have radiologists who actually go in and verify what the recommendation is of the AI. But as they do, as the model is now retrained, we then are able to perform automatic diagnoses. So here, here's a question. Humans immediately are able to say, is this perfect? No. That is definitely not lung cancer. I think the AI is still thinking about it, right? But as more data comes in, we're able to establish greater confidence. Okay, I've got a few other use case examples here. So in here, we've got the example of Deep Instinct. So if you do go on the website, you will see that it says that it is backed by Munich Re. So it is an artificial cyber security platform that basically provides a guarantee to prevent ransomware and malware attacks. And if there is this kind of breach, then there are certain kinds of costs that are indemnified. So that is really putting your brand out there to say, I have this level of confidence in my system, in my product that I am now selling. The next one is Spectrum Labs. I mean, this one here is, you know, when we think about Mark Zuckerberg is constantly in the media for displaying perhaps inappropriate content and toxic content, especially during their election rallies and the like. And they utilize some kind of AI to be able to determine whether the content that is being released is inappropriate, is toxic. So Spectrum AI is a company that actually provides this kind of moderation for social platforms. And with that, it comes with a guarantee of accuracy. So I think that one is also a very interesting, very current and real topic that is now impacting our environment. And finally, we've got a fintech one, which is with Frogster. So here, this is in the e-commerce environment, where basically, if there is some kind of credit card fraud, then, you know, the question is, how can clients then assess and trust the technology performance in that production, right? So Frogster then comes in and is able to guarantee that this kind of fraudulent activity is now prevented, or there's a high likelihood that it can actually provide this kind of security in the e-commerce environment if there is some kind of activity that is fraudulent in the credit card environment. Okay, so those are just quickly 3 items, and this Spectrum Labs, it's a San Francisco-based company, and it's really providing this kind of trust and safety to the system for internet brands and to help identify, as I say, toxic behavior online. Okay, so worldwide, we have multiple AI partners, and these are just some of them. As we know, climate change, and it's very important that we also partner with some green tech initiative companies, and you see that there are several listed here, and there's new tech opportunities as well. Okay, so I think with that, and in closing, artificial intelligence will definitely become a significant part of our daily life, be it personal and work. Therefore, the insurance of it is now critical towards our digital transformation. So I hope as individuals, I have been successful in at least partly demystifying AI, and equally hope to ignite your curiosity of our future world. I now reflect on one of the earlier slides, with 88% of people thinking that in the next 10 years, artificial intelligence will disrupt our future, our industries, a multitude of industries. And with that, I guess my question to all of you is that level of confidence in this future risk. Are you ready? Okay. So thank you very much for this really express session on artificial intelligence. And I think with that, I want to also refer you to 2 websites. So we've got our AI Insure, which I will populate in the chat. Should you wish to get more information on AI, it is present there. And in addition to that, us as Munich Re, we host a Lima platform. So for that Lima platform, we have some artificial intelligence and a host of other topics. And please also feel free to register on that platform as well. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Tasha, for that very insightful presentation. Are we ready indeed? That is the question that we need to ask and answer for ourselves. Thank you so much once again for that presentation. All right, moving on to our next speaker now. He goes by the name of Alexander Carvelas. He is the head of a global consulting unit, SSA, at Munich Re, and he's going to be talking to us today about redefining the role of the pricing actuary in the age of machine learning. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for that introduction. So I am Alexander Carvelas. A little bit about me. I look after the global consulting team at MROA. So we are truly a team of global consultants. We have offices across Southeast Asia, Central Europe, and Australia. And today, I'd just like to share a little bit about some of what we see as being the latest trends in pricing and how that impacts the role of a pricing actuary in an insurance company. So hopefully the tech plays along. Just give me a second. Fantastic. All righty. So if we consider a typical pricing exercise that any short-term insurance company might undertake, you can really think of it as being 3 phases. So we've got collection and cleaning of the data, producing the prediction, which would be then the model building itself, and then translating that model output into something which is actionable, so your decision-making phase. Typically, we refer to that as converting the technical risk premium into a commercial premium. And today, I'd like to focus on the aspect of coming to the technical risk premium and some of the trends that we're seeing. more specifically, let's look at the race of the algorithm. So there's multiple tools that are available to us in coming to a prediction. Over here is some of the timelines of when the academic research around this was finalized. And you'll see that, interestingly enough, some of the more advanced methods, so my colleague Tasha referenced random forests and neural networks, were actually discovered quite early on, a number of years ago. They're almost old tech. However, we haven't really had the computing power to make proper and full use of them. So you'll see here, back in 1999, a futurist by the name of Raymond Kurzweil made a prediction for at which stage or which year $1,000 of computing power would equal certain intelligences. So we have here an insect brain, a mouse brain, a human brain, human brains in existence. So really this acceleration, you can see it is an exponential type curve. This acceleration in our computing capabilities enables us to then harness some of the discoveries which academics have made quite a few years back. So with that background, what then exactly is AutoML? Essentially, a pricing analyst had to start in the future with a hypothesis. They would collect some data, they'd try and visualize that, they'd play with the data, see what trends were emerging in sort of basic one-way analyses. They might try and engineer extra features out of the data set that they had available. And then they would have to train the model using your traditional GLM techniques. So that's typically a stepwise regression. From there, they'd need to then go through that whole training process again to try different combinations of variables and different model fits. AutoML, in a nutshell, automates that process of model building. So in terms of the input from an analyst now, you only require model selection and application of judgment. You can really think of that then as an optimization algorithm, which runs through the entire possible universe of models for that data set. It runs through all of the combinations and it selects for you the model which maximizes the KPI that you've selected. So this really reduces the hours and hours of manual intervention that a pricing actuary would usually have to go through to come up with the technical model. And in the past, you could never really be certain that you had selected the most optimal technical model. Essentially, the more variables that you have in your data set, the larger the number of combinations and models that you might be able to possibly analyze. And it just becomes an impossible task to know that you've tested all of the options. So within a specified time frame and against a specified criteria, AutoML allows us to reduce that complexity. Okay. So if we then put that against the backdrop of what it is that pricing teams have been doing in the past, we can think of this as moving through generations and the time spent on prediction. So initially, a pricing exercise required very advanced knowledge of coding languages, typically something like SAS or an R used for statistical analysis, or they would use simplified methods like rate adjustment tools. There's a great amount of effort involved in that, and you don't necessarily have the best prediction outcome. Moving on into the last decade, all of those tools and techniques were professionalized into GLM-based pricing software. So I think that a lot of you in the audience might be familiar with Towers Watson and their modeling suite. Some of you may have had some interactions with a few of the alternative competitors, but essentially they all do the same thing in just making it very easy to implement a standard GLM and visualize that. Generation 2 is then the AutoML solution. It's still focuses on a GLM technique, and it is something which is available in pricing software. So in our case, as Global Consulting, we've tried out a couple of these offerings, and at the moment we're using Accurate. But there are many options in the market, and we tend to see this as really a commoditized prediction. So you're commoditizing the prediction in that anyone with the software can come to the most optimal technical modeling output. Here, I'd just like to compare a little bit some of the modeling techniques which we see. So we've got the legacy software solution. We've got full-on machine learning, which I'll reference again Tasha's presentation, where she spoke a lot about gradient boosting or tree-based methods that we see as sort of classical machine learning, and is something which is employed by data scientists around the world. And then we've got the AutoML solution, which is based off of what's known as a generalized additive model solution. So against these metrics of predictiveness, scalability, implementation, efficiency, and interpretation, we've just had a look at how we think everything compares. So AutoML is perhaps not necessarily the most predictive modeling technique. Often something like a gradient boosting model or even a tree-based method such as a random forest might give you a slightly better prediction. But if we then think about needing to translate that into something which is actionable and implementable in business, and which is understandable by not only the pricing actuaries themselves, but perhaps by the product team, by brokers, by your customers, then AutoML solutions definitely trump the marginal returns that you get in predictiveness through machine learning. Just a little bit more of a AutoML versus machine learning, but essentially this modeling technique has been developed specifically for insurance, whereas machine learning is sort of a bit of a hands-off approach. It's implemented across multiple industries, and essentially you are not always bringing specialized domain knowledge to the modeling exercise. So a data scientist would specialize, has their forte in being able to solve multiple different types of business problems using data sets across industries. Whereas in this case, we're focusing specifically on empowering technical specialists in the insurance world to come up with the most accurate prediction. Here, the pricing expert is still at the center of the process. And we would want to use AutoML to remove some of the risks associated with black box AI, which often these other machine learning techniques could easily become. Right, so what does this all mean for the pricing actuary and pricing teams? I think by now it should be quite clear that the way that we're seeing this is that under legacy methods, you had almost a linear relationship between the amount of effort that you put in and the number of models that you got. Whereas now with AutoML, we minimize the effort and get far more models. So we can now focus on not only interpretability, but also maximizing the predictiveness for the minimum effort. Now, this translates a little bit into a bit of a business impact for the way that a pricing team in an insurance company might be structured. So with your basic pricing capability, you would only ever have had a limited number of models. You may have had to have been quite selective in the number of models or risks that you did model. And you would only be able to complete those modeling exercises
We do apologize for that. There seems to be a technical glitch there with Alexander. We are sorting it out, and he will be right back once it is sorted. We're going to head on over to our next speaker for now. Thokozile Mahlangu is no stranger here to InsureTalk, and she's going to be giving us a media update regarding the IISA. Over to you, Thokozile.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The theme for this InsureTalk is future risks. One of the benefits of becoming an ISA professional member or a corporate partner is that you benefit from our international relationships with the Institute of Global Insurance Education as well as the International Insurance Society. A few months ago, we shared a report from the International Insurance Society prepared by Accenture, which focused on the future of chief underwriting officers. The report indicated that the structure of many underwriting organizations is prohibiting to the strategic development of underwriting. It highlighted that for underwriting to reach its new human and technological potential, there is a need to elevate underwriting to a strategic leadership role. Some of the key points from the report is that the underwriting environment is becoming more complex. The risk evaluation environment is also becoming more complex with new risks, new exposures, and data sources. The report further highlighted that insurers need to have a strategic investment in underwriting. That investment needs to focus more than improving underwriting efficiencies or underwriting accuracy. The report highlighted that the investment in strategic underwriting requires a need to enable innovation and quick responses to the changes in the market environment with bringing new products to the market. It is said that the chief underwriting officer is best positioned to lead strategic change. So become a professional member or a corporate partner of the ISA and benefit from this type of content. In closing, I'd like you to look out for our digital magazine, which we will be launching next week. So follow us on social media or subscribe to our newsletter and be able to tap into this content that's going to be coming to the market next week. The IISA digital magazine is rich in content. It is content you will not want to miss. Above all, remember to become an ISA member. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that update, Thokozile. All right, we seem to have come right with Alexander. His glitch has been resolved, so we will go right back to him for him to continue his talk. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for that. It seems that the trust I placed in my UPS at home was not warranted. Let's hope that we can get through the rest of the slides without any interruptions. I'll just start sharing again. Okay, fantastic. Right, sorry, let me just try and pick up where I left off. So looking at an intermediate sort of pricing operation, I think I had mentioned that you can then start looking at a little bit more granularity and in terms of modeling specific covers, looking at a frequency and severity approach. And again, over here, in terms of scaling your operation, it means employing, again, going through into the most advanced, which may be doing some sort of what you're seeing in terms of your competitors' pricing, and optimizing your portfolio requires a very big overhead in terms of your head count. These AutoML solutions reduce the number of people dedicated specifically to that. And now you might be thinking, all right, so we have here now a modeling process which is so optimized that you're essentially putting your pricing team out of a job. Rest assured, as a professional body, I think that we're good at finding ways of adding value in other ways, and start thinking a little bit deploy our capacity. So diligence, optimization of the pricing engine itself, and of course, we return some control to the actuary. So how do we do this? In terms of the decision making, we focus on the why and no longer now. So why do we believe, for example, that we should be rated intelligence as well? As I mentioned earlier, you may have a
All right, it seems Alexander is still having some technical challenges over there, so we're going to head on over to the next segment for now and try him a little bit later on. We're going to head on over to our entertainment segment now. It's a proudly South African showcase, and one that you'll surely enjoy. This is 15 minutes long, so use this to get some coffee, stretch, and then head right back after the segment is done. So do be sure to return after 15 minutes over to the next segment.
For you who don't know who I am, my name is Craig Abani, and as this year ends, I am very excited to be able to entertain you along with some other fantastic performers. Without wasting any more time, let's get into the first song.
Now this is your chance to get up and party. Get up from your seats. Come on, everybody. The name is Haley C, and we're gonna party. Oh yes, we are. Here we go. Let's do some local for you. You're a good soldier, choosing our battles. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off. You're back on the saddle. You're on the front line. Everyone's watching. We're getting serious. We're getting closer. This isn't over. The pressure's on. You feel it. You've got it all. Believe it. When you fuck it up, oh. If you fuck it up, hey. Cause this is Africa. It's time for Africa. Come on. Here we go. Listen to your time, choosing a model. No time to shine, no waiting line of almost but no. People are raising their expectation. Oh, and feeling this Cause this is Africa. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our host. It's the amazing Craig Ubani.
And now for a song from one of South Africa's very own legends, the one and only Mr. Johnny Clegg. You'll know this one, it's called Spirit of the Great Heart. Yeah. Here we go. The whole world is full of strange behavior. Every man must be his own savior. I know I can make it on my own if I tried, but I'm searching for a great heart to stand me by beneath the African sky. A great heart to stand me by. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart to hold and stand me by. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart under African sky. And sometimes I feel that you really know me. And sometimes there's so much you could show me. There's a highway of stars across the heavens. There's a whispering song of the wind and the grass. There's a rolling thunder across the savannah. A hope and a dream at the edge of the sky. And your life is a story like the wind. Your life is a story like the wind. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart to hold and stand me by. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart under African sky. And sometimes I feel that you really know me. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart. It burns my name inside. Sometimes I feel that you really know me. And sometimes there's so much you could show me. I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart to hold and stand me by.
Ek wil huis toe gaan, na mama toe. Die rivier is vol my trane rol. En 'n bokkie wat vanaand by my wil lê, sê kamane, ek is 'n loslapie. Ek wil huis toe gaan, na mama toe. Die rivier is vol my trane rol. En 'n bokkie wat vanaand by my wil lê, sê kamane, ek is 'n loslapie. Ek wens ek het bekke soos 'n arend. Dan vlug ek na verre weg oor die see. Dan vlug ek na die jare van my moeder. En daar sal ek bly tot die dood. Hoe ek wil huis toe gaan, na mama toe. Die rivier is vol met trane rol. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Hoe het wil heen toe gaan, nou wat toe. Die rivier is voor mij tranenrol. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Ik wens ik het vlakke zoals een engelkie. Dan vlug ik naar die transcentrale sien. Dan vlug ik naar die jaren van mijn moeder. En daar zal ik blij tot die dag. Hoe ik wil heen toe gaan, nou wat toe. Die rivier is voor mij tranenrol. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Hoe ik wil heen toe gaan, nou wat toe. Die rivier is voor mij tranenrol. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Right, ladies and gentlemen, let me see you guys clap your hands. So let me feel you guys. Clap your hands like this, come on. Yes. Oh, ik is een loslapie. Now you all know the song, right? Let me hear you guys sing it at home. 1, 2, 3. Hoe ik wil heen toe gaan, nou maar toe. Die rivier is voor mij tranenrol. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Hoe ik wil heen toe gaan, nou maar toe. Die rivier is voor mij tranenrol. Hallo bokkie nog. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Hey! Hoe ik wil heen toe gaan, nou maar toe. Die rivier is voor mij tranenrol. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. One more time. En een bokkie wat vanaan bij mij wil leen. Zeker mannen, ik is een loslapie. Mr. Super Hall, 6 my booze, baby. Just sir. What's up? Sit 1, 2, 3, let's go. See, I've been watching you every day of my life. Ooh. See, messing around with all the guys. Now let me tell you one more time. Baby, tonight I'm gonna hold you till you cry. So hold you till you cry for more. Baby, tonight I'm gonna hold you till you cry for more. Hold you till you cry for more. What's up? Hey, we see on the stage, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Bobby,
Give me a little bit of
how you
hope.
feeling?
Now, if you know it at home, let me try to sing it with us. Yeah, well, Joanna, she runs the country. She runs the tavern and the tea runs far. She makes a few of her people happy. Oh, she don't care about the rest at all. She's got a system they call apartheid. It puts a brother in a subjection. But maybe pressure will make Joanna see how everybody could live as one. Oh, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, till the morning comes. Oh, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, hope before the morning comes. I heard she makes all her gold in Mali to buy weapons any shape of gun. While all the mothers of the blacks are where to fear the killing of another son. She's got a system they call apartheid. It puts the brother in a subjection. But maybe pressure will make Joanna see how everybody could live as one. Oh, give me hope, Joanna. Hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, till the money come. Well, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, hope before the money comes. Do it, listen. Well, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, for the money comes. Well, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, before the money comes. Ladies and gentlemen, hope to see you guys again in live stages, right in front of our faces. But meanwhile, sanitize, wash your hands, and keep the distance going. Oh, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, till the money comes. Well, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, hope before the money comes. Well, give me hope, Joanna, hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, till the money comes. Well, give me hope, Joanna, give me hope, Joanna, hope before the money comes. Oh, we got one more for y'all. Taking it way, way back in time. Just was Mr. Mendoza. Now everybody knows the song. Say 1, 2, 3, say Galagata. Galagata. Say Galagata. Galagata. Whoa. Galagata. Galagata. Say Galagata. Just Galagata. Whoa. Galagata. Just Galagata. Galagata. Just Galagata. Whoa, Galagata, 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 whoa, Galagata. Yapandi body, this too strong. Yapandi Joe, this too strong. Yapandi body, this too strong. Yapandi Joe, this too strong. Right, ladies and gentlemen, let's see one hands in the air, baby. Now let's feel both hands in the air. Just this was Menana Betsoon, Menana Betsoon, Menana Betsoon. Sit 1, 2, 3, sit, buddy. Tell her what. It's stupid, stupid, stupid. 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 Galagata. Just Galagata. Galagata. What's Galagata. Whoa. Galagata. 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 Just Galagata. Whoa. Zaitonio.
ABC and Bucky.
Galagata.
And our dancers, yeah. Peace.
Galagata.
This is going to be our last song now. We hope you've had as much fun as we have entertaining you. You know this one. I know you want to party. Get up off your chair, put the volume up, and sing and party with us. Enjoy.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami ilondoloze 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 zungangishilana ilondoloze 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 zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami.
And we are back. That was so much fun. If those tracks didn't make you feel all nostalgic and have you dancing, then I don't know what will. Thank you so much for that showcase. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and judging from the activity in the chat, you all clearly did. All right, over to our next speaker now. He goes by the name of Norbert Hackner. Norbert is a senior motor and mobility consultant at Munich Re. He's going to be talking to us today about commercial mobility and automotive as key growth factors in insurance. Over to you, Norbert.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a nice introduction. I hope you can hear me, and so that's why I also directly start sharing my screen. I hope this is going well so far. So maybe I can receive a signal from somewhere if you can see my screen.
Yes, sharing perfectly.
Yes, perfect, good. Then also thank you, and also warm welcome from my side. So yeah, my name is Norbert, and I'm gonna talk with you about commercial motor mobility as a growth factor today. And within the next, probably I think 20 to 25 minutes, I first want to shortly touch on the global mobility situation as such, and as we as Munich see this. So as I can say, commercial motor mobility is a very hot topic at the moment. I think with the many automotive discussions and such, we have this topic, and it's kind of symbol of new ways of traveling from A to B. And overall mobility not only contains the famous 4 letters CASE, which stands for Connected, Autonomous, Shared, Electric, but it also encompasses new business models and presents new risks, and also creates new opportunities for us in the insurance world. And that's why we say insurers and the whole insurance community need to observe and also act on these market trends in order to capitalize on both current and future business models, also, so to say, stay relevant in these factors. That's why I'm pleased to talk with you today about the 4 topics that you can see on the right. Yeah? So the one topic is really on new mobility world as such and commercial fleets. The other one is in connected insurance, which stands for new business building trends, so to say. The third one is around car manufacturers, so also standing for OEM, so original equipment manufacturer, becoming one of the biggest mobility players. And the last one, also very important topic around e-mobility. So before kicking off, I wanted to show one of our favorite slides, which is showing the overall motor premium globally, how we see it, and also how we see the development. So the good news first, so our view is that the overall motor premium is increasing over the next years, but shifting from kind of traditional segments to new business segments as such. So one of the biggest segments is the so-called tech-based motor insurance, which also stands for connected insurance and telematics, which in our view is two different symbols for this technology-based motor insurance. But we're going to have a deep dive later on this. Another important topic is around commercial fleets and over the whole shared mobility infrastructure, where we're all going to have a deep dive later on. The latter one, like the autonomous vehicles, so this is a very important topic as well. It's a very strong R&D topic at the moment, but from a really premium perspective, as you can see in this picture, not taking off in the next few years. And that's why we have also excluded it for the next 20 minutes of our discussion. So as I said, the first topic is around new mobility world and the commercial fleets. And for this, we want to start also again with the picture, showing you our view on new mobility. So I think most of you have seen lots of participants, almost 1,000. You probably know of a lot of people talked and heard about new mobility. I think it's worthwhile having a deep dive on this before starting. So within new mobility, you can see we divided it into four main sections. The first one is on a subscription side, which contains mainly, or a short description of this is more flexible and a short-time leasing offering compared to the traditional leasing. The other one, the car sharing, I think most of you know that car sharing is taking off. Yes, we have seen a lot of offerings in free-floating, in station-based, but what we see is a very important trend in a couple of markets is the so-called peer-to-peer car sharing, which stands for a more private car sharing. You're, as a private person, sharing your private car with another private person. And this obviously is a quite important trend in many markets. The ride-sharing piece, especially due to Uber and the ride-hailing piece, is very well known. Ride pooling is taking off as well, so it's a more public way of ride-hailing, so where you share your ride with other people, so sitting in minibuses, for instance, and sharing the ride with others. Also, for instance, app-based. The smart shuttles around AVs is definitely coming as well and going to be a part of the ride-sharing community, so to say. Micromobility, especially to big players like Lime and Bird, I think is also very well known for them. So this is how we see the new mobility world. And then looking at 2021, so now we think, so the car ownership as such in the mindset of many people is still relevant. It's shrinking, but it's still quite an important piece. So it's important for people to own cars on themselves. It's shrinking, but still, as you can see, a relevant piece. So when you're looking at 2030, you see this really shrinking over the years, and the car experience, so to say, is decreasing as well, and the mobility experience, so to say, increasing. So what do we mean with car experience? So the car experience means also what kind of car you're driving, which kind of brand you have, as I said, if you own it. And this is what we see, right, decreasing a lot. So as I was 18, for instance, unfortunately, over 20 years ago, one very big thing was getting my driver's license. So I felt completely free afterwards, was a very big thing. But now in the younger generation, getting a driver's license and buying a car is really not the first move you do when you turn 18. So they think more in how can they really fast and cheap go from A to B, which stands for the mobility experience as such. And they maybe just go more on various apps to get a better view how to get from A to B. And that's the so-called mobility aggregators, as you can see in orange. And this is a very good and important target segment from our view for insurance players to partner with, because they're growing, getting bigger and bigger, and this platform is going to be part of our future lives. This new mobility world, of course, is quite flashy and stands for commercial mobility as such, but commercial mobility also has more to offer. Maybe it's a little bit more boring talking about motor fleets. For instance, we see big potential in the SME segments, in the mid-market segments, but also in the large segments. So not to forget, the car experience and the car ownership is decreasing. This also means, for instance, that we are more reliable on delivery services. And this then goes in a growth in normal motor fleets in the SME segment, mid and large, which comes along also with a different risk management view, especially on the underwriting side, as you can see in the second line. So on the SME segment, you see it's more rules-based, and the mid-market and large segment, it's more individual-based. And we see this is a strong and important trend, which also needs to be observed. And we as Munich Re are also quite active in this. And I think for you, it's also important to get a few numbers on this. And for instance, as we can look at Africa as a whole at the moment, also in all global markets, this trend is increasing heavily. As you can see in every market, the gross written premiums are increasing. Same for Africa. So within the next 20 years, we expect really the whole premium volume to double. And especially we see a very strong shift from retail to commercial. So sad, the good example is the new delivery culture. And the other one where we see is also this profitable business opportunity, but risk management as such is very crucial. And therefore, also there's very much room for improvement in the technology piece as well. So lots of fleets which we see in the market already use devices, solutions for the fleet tracking, but without insurance. And this also brings us to a very important chapter, which is the next one, which is around connected insurance. So connected insurance, as I said initially, also stands for telematics in our view. And before starting, I think it makes sense to give a short introduction to telematics and how we see it and how we define it. So from our view, it's an insurance policy which an insurer uses to dynamic data. Where an insurer uses dynamic data acquired via telematics devices to kind of personalize and also improve its service offerings to a customer. And in doing so, the insurer can increase its profitability, of course, which is important, by mitigating risk exposure, but also rewarding better driving and good driving, and improving the risk modelings and risk management. And as you can see here, telematics already have been on quite a long journey. So starting from some time ago, telematics was used kind of to help insurers to identify fraud and theft within the first car sharing offerings. Then a couple of years ago, as you can see on the picture, became more prominent in some markets, especially with the new ride-hailing offerings. It was important to fairly price this new risk based on the true driving behavior, but also on the usage. And now, in the future, or we see like cars are getting more connected with insurance as such. So also this tailor-made insurance offerings become prominent. And so the pricing and also integration in new vertical business models become very interesting for insurance players. And especially during COVID-19 was kind of a growth factor for telematics and usage-based insurance, because customers could see how inflexible the traditional programs are. And this got visible. And that's why we see a higher demand for this as well. And also looking for Africa, so our numbers show really an increasing demand on this, and also in the potential of the premium. And looking at South Africa in special, so our estimations show that we roughly have 300,000 policies end of last year, active in 8 programs in total, being Discovery as the market leader with 90%. So also in South Africa, telematics is valid and is increasing and stands for a big business opportunity. We as Munich Re are also quite active in this field, as I said. So there's a very important decision insurers need to take at the beginning. Am I going for a so-called smartphone-based solution, or am I going for black box OBD2 solution, which goes more in devices which are installed, flexibly installed in the vehicles, which can be taken off. But this also comes with a price. For instance, Munich Re is partnering with the Flow, which is one of the world leaders in telematic solutions within the smartphone-based offerings. And they're also active in South Africa, but this is our partner when it comes really to telematics developments. And also, as you can see in the numbers here on the left, the number of the smartphone-based telematics offerings are increasing heavily over the last years. We now estimated it's roughly 50%. And in South Africa, from looking at these programs, it's all at the moment roughly 50% of the programs are smartphone-based. Numbers increasing, as I said. And so this is a reason, which you can see on the right of my slide. So one important thing is really that the barriers and especially the costs are lower as these black boxes and these devices are really coming with some cost, also for the customer. On the one hand, it's also more customer-centric and easier to use, just having the smartphone as your telematics device and no additional devices. And from a strategic perspective, it's also more efficient, easier to scale, and has a better data quality. Data is also now overlapped to the next topic, because the players or the mobility players, which are owning most of the data also from driving behaviors and so on, are obviously the car manufacturers. So in this respect, so I call it OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. That's why I think it's very important also to look at the car manufacturers as being or becoming the true mobility players, and they have a currently very strong transformation. And this, I think, is very important to observe as well. As you can see on the left, technology is really becoming very important. So on the one hand, obviously, everybody knows you need to reduce CO2 emission, clear. And in the next 20 years, from a car manufacturer, from an OEM perspective, there is no other way in producing and selling more electric vehicles. Another piece in the technology is, I call this smartphone on wheels. So the connectivity of the cars is increasing heavily. Another important pillar is around the consumer preferences. So as I said initially, the change of ownership mindset is definitely there. So one of the buzzwords is mobility as a service. But also on the consumer side, the convenience and digitalization is getting more important. So it's not just driving a car. When I'm checking which car I'm driving, I'm also checking how well is the app, how well I'm connected with my car, with my app. Is this really working well? This is becoming much more important. And last but not least, also regulation insurance, obviously. So as I said, cars are producing massive data sets. And the question is also, who is then really allowed to use these data sets? How this data is going to be used? And another one, obviously, the customer behavior is changing due to a lot of driving assistance systems. And these new technologies definitely become pricing relevant. So these are a couple of trends from an automotive view, which are very important to look at. And that's why also car manufacturers are on their way to transformation from pure manufacturing to also becoming a service provider. And this comes across with a couple of challenges, as you can see on the right hand of the slide, regarding insurance services. They have two main challenges. The one challenge is really translating all this technology into customer-centric solutions and enable this data for new business models. Customer centricity obviously is one of the overarching goals of car manufacturers. On the other hand, it's really creating digital insurance infrastructure with a global delivery. So Tesla obviously is leading in this aspect, that they are selling all their cars online and already having a completely digital OEM ecosystem as such. And therefore, at the moment, for most car manufacturers, partnering activities become important with a lot of insurance players to overcome these challenges. This also brings opportunity for us in the insurance sector. So the role of insurance when talking about car manufacturers is changing. So in this respect, we can see ourselves like kind of enabling the car manufacturers in the transformation way. especially with this data-driven insights, what we have, think data scientists or data science. It's one of our core competencies, what we have. And that's why we can be a fundamental part of this digital OEM sales journey, so to say. And so as you can see on the right hand of the slide, there are two options. One is really entering in this current OEM business model, so to say, which is you as a private person go to a dealership, say to the sales agent, I want a new car, you get some good service, you get coffee, get a view, and finally maybe you buy the car. Then at the end he says, by the way, I also can sell you insurance. Normally you say, okay, good, thank you, but maybe I check my aggregators digitally, and I'm pretty sure that I'm getting the best offer there. And this is exactly actually what the car manufacturers don't want you to do. Obviously, they want you to live in their complete OEM ecosystem as such. And that's why the blue ocean, that you can see on the right, the so-called future digital OEM business model becomes more and more important for them. One of the buzzwords there, I think probably everybody knows, is obviously embedded insurance, which is a kind of 2.0 digital insurance sales. It's completely embedded in the sales journey, which is perfect for the OEMs, obviously. So you buy your car online. For instance, as a Tesla, it's already quite active in this. Others, for instance, as Volvo, they recently announced that 2030 also become a completely digital player and want to sell all their cars online. Others are following. And this comes with, on one hand, a lot of potential for insurance being partner with this embedded insurance offering. On the other hand, is also obviously the risk in losing market share, in losing business. So this is something definitely what needs to be observed in the future. And the easiest way to sell EVs, I mentioned Tesla quite some time, is sell cars, already Tesla, is in selling electric vehicles. And this brings me to the last chapter for our talk today, which is e-mobility. I know that in South Africa, the sales numbers for electric vehicles at these days are quite low at the moment. But I think it's important to talk about what is really driving e-mobility, what are the drivers behind, and what needs to be watched out for. So, as I got introduced earlier, I'm located in Germany and also German nationality, coming from Germany. So in Germany, we have a lot of government incentives that you get one-time payments, you get tax benefits. And from a European Union perspective, there are also a lot of emission targets that forcing car manufacturers really to push their sales level. And why is this necessary? This is on the second point. Because the battery is still the most cost-intensive block within an electric car. And that's why, because the production costs for battery is still very high. And this is the reason why electric cars in these days are still more cost-intensive compared to normal petrol and diesel cars. And therefore, all these incentives are needed that customers finally buy electric vehicles. The good thing is that the battery production costs are decreasing heavily. We expect in a couple of years that without incentives, EVs get cheaper compared to diesel battery cars. Other drivers are charging environment and car manufacturing. But here we have the classic chicken and egg situation. So the charging network environment, so the people really setting up the charging networks and public charging stations, are saying, I cannot build up a decent network as long as I can be sure that there are sufficient EV models in the market. And obviously the car manufacturer is saying, for me as a car manufacturer perspective, I'm sending more models over to your market than I know there's really a decent charging environment and charging network system. Because if it's not there, nobody gonna buy this, or nobody gonna buy my cars. And this also shows the next slide, which gives you a global overview about sales numbers around electric vehicles. And as you can see here, it's very condensed. So it's 6-7 market, which stand for 87% of the global EV registrations. And currently, end of 2020, we had more than 10 million plug-in EVs sold worldwide and on the streets. And these markets, what you can see, they actually all have something in common. They have had or still have a lot of incentives, people purchasing EVs. They already have quite more or less decent infrastructure and also sufficient EV models. Especially China is leading there. They have the most models you can get from a customer perspective, very decent network, and also models at a very cheap price. Which brings me, and as you can see, in 2030, our estimation is really that this is going up on a global level, up to 20-25%. This also brings me to my last slide, that what kind of opportunities do we have from an insurance perspective? So product and pricing, this is definitely the traditional opportunities. But on the product field, it's also slightly different. EV customers are having different needs, especially when it comes up to services. The towing, for instance, is important. Also on the EV coverages, especially as I said, the battery is the most cost-intensive block, so it's important how the battery is covered. And also what we know that electric vehicles definitely, at these days, have higher repair costs compared to non-electric vehicles. The pricing, I think this is clear that pricing excellent methodologies are important to better price new risks around EVs. But we also see future business opportunities there, which comes across the charging environment. As I said, it's crucial to set up a decent charging network. But this also comes from insurance with some opportunities around there. And as a last point, again, the battery, as you see, it's quite important. Obviously, the estimation of the residual value of the batteries gets important also for many market participants. And in this respect, for selling used electric vehicles, an extended warranty on the battery is also a crucial topic for many players and also, again, for car manufacturers. So I hope I'm in time, and with this, I want to close my speak around commercial motor mobility. And obviously want to thank you for your attention. And with this, I hand back to the main stage.
Thank you so much, Norbert. Lots of great insights coming through from your presentation there. We thoroughly enjoyed that. All right, let's not waste any more time now and head on over to our next speaker. Goes by the name of Phetogo Mabaso. Phetogo is the senior consultant in the IFRS 17 lead and client management at Munich Re. Phetogo is going to be talking to us about financial solutions. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. Just a bit of a correction. So I'm the IFRS 17 program lead and also a senior consultant in the non-life financial solutions area. So I'm in a dual role in the company, but thank you very much for the introduction and the warm welcome. And good morning to everyone. It would have been lovely to be speaking to you in a physical environment, but I think still great to be speaking in a virtual environment. I need to share my screen. I hope you can share, you can see it. Let's go to presentation. So yes, this morning, thank you very much. I'll be talking to you a bit about financial solutions in a post-COVID-19 environment. In the interest of time, I'll go right into my introduction slides and take it from there. I think we can all agree that the world is changing, and so too are global insurance markets and the needs of insurers. Many of these changes, be it the distressed economic environments we find ourselves trading in, even before COVID-19 hit us, volatile equity and currency markets, low interest rates, changing regulatory environments, and product innovation, to name but a few, bring much uncertainty to insurers from a financial and capital perspective. So we at Munich Re, we believe that reinsurance can do more for our clients beyond traditional risk transfer solutions. And so in this presentation, we'll focus a bit on the best use of reinsurance, not only in these uncertain environments, but also going into the future, as we're talking about the future of insurance this morning. So as I said, we believe that reinsurance can do more for our clients beyond traditional risk transfer solutions. And therefore, we offer alternative risk transfer solutions. And the important thing here is that it's really driven by our clients' holistical motivation and not necessarily product specific. So it could be that a client wants to increase the organization's ability to manage capital or to meet solvency requirements, for instance. When you think of KPIs, which are quite important to everyone, it could be about smoothing earnings and reducing some of the volatility that you can see in the KPIs, or it could be providing an immediate and adequate response needed when a natural disaster strikes. And so we group these into kind of 6 topic areas. Overall, they can be defined as regulatory solutions, KPI optimization, and event-driven solutions. In the next few slides, my apologies, it doesn't seem like my laptop is synchronized. Okay, my apologies about that. So what I just mentioned now, so here you see regulatory solutions, KPI optimization, and event-driven solutions. And in the next few slides, we'll touch on each of these areas a little bit and expand on them further. There we go. So as said in the beginning, insurers continuously experience changes to their business. Markets change, portfolios evolve, new types and levels of risks emerge. I think Tasha spoke this morning about AI. We all know about cybersecurity. Again, with most people moving more to a virtual environment, this topic has now come up the risk register on a lot of insurers and other entities alike. And so in an effort to optimize an organization's reinsurance, it may be prudent to separate these risks from existing solutions so that they can be better quantified and managed in terms of contractual formulations, pricing, retentions, and so forth. And of course, as 2020 has so aptly reminded us, even the best laid business plans can encounter disruptions. And therefore, tailor-made reinsurance can protect your capital base and minimize the impact of such distressing situations on an entity's earnings and the KPIs. I can still see my screen. When we talk about KPIs of an insurer, obviously it's a multifaceted universe. And for us, though, we do believe that the volatility that is seen in these KPIs can be enhanced and optimized by reinsurance. So what you see here on the screen is a number of KPIs that are typical for many insurers. And firstly, my apologies, it doesn't seem to be recognizing. You have got certain KPIs which are subject to volatility. When we talk about volatility, it could be volatility in the insurance or so-called technical results. And that could be brought about by events such as a large loss event, if you're trading in a high operating expense environment, and also if you've got a large number of losses, even though they're not necessarily large loss events, those could all put pressure on your insurance results and therefore bring about certain volatility. We also, though, do have volatility in the non-insurance results, in the financial results, especially when you talk about forex gains and losses, so the changes in exchange rates, which can also be managed to a certain extent, although not fully using reinsurance solutions. And of course, the other important thing is the efficient use of capital. And capital source and capital management. And in the next few slides, we touch a bit about how reinsurance can then assist in managing capital. So when we look at some key examples, this one here is on KPI optimization. It's a non-prop solution. It's a multi-year CATS Excel, multi-year aggregate CATS Excel. You will see it's a structured aggregate Excel or stop loss on a multi-year basis. And maybe the key feature here to touch on is the so-called loss corridor, which you see from N1 going forward. So what would traditionally happen with some of these multi-year contracts is that if the experience is significantly worse, say in the first year and end here than expected, this would generally have a negative impact on pricing and possibly structure going forward. And so a loss corridor is one of the mechanisms that can be employed to mitigate this volatility or variability of reinsurance loss projections. And thereby it enhances the alignment of interest of the ceding insurer as well as the reinsurer. So what a loss corridor is that it's a mechanism that requires the ceding insurer to be responsible for a certain amount of ultimate net loss above the company's designated retention and below the designated reinsurance limit, which would otherwise be reimbursed under the reinsurance agreement. So if we look here on the slide, you would see that the retention of the cedant in this example would be 15. Ordinarily, it then means the losses above 15 would be covered by the reinsurance corridor, by the reinsurance contract. So when you put a loss corridor in place, we would say losses say between 15 and 16, that would be covered by the reinsurer. Any losses between 16 and 18 form part of this loss corridor. So then those would be covered by the ceding insurer, and then losses in excess of the 18 again are covered by the reinsurance contract. This then putting a structure like this in place, it obviously then you can adjust it in future years. So then you increase your retention and then things should normalize going forward. So what this structure does is that it reduces P&L volatility in an economic way. And again, I think it's important here to mention that we can tailor-make a solution like this to achieve target effects. So normally each entity has got certain target KPIs. And so we would work together with the insurer to make sure that whatever structure that we put in place will help the insurer to achieve these target KPIs. Maybe important to note with all of these examples that we touched on this morning, that it is not a comprehensive list of all the solutions which we can and have put in place before as we agree, but it's just to illustrate to you this morning what some of our capabilities are in the space. If we move along now to the next example that we have in KPI optimization, it's about foreign denominated expenses, so-called local currency impacts. In this example, and which is quite common, especially with P&C insurers in the motor space, that they import some of the parts. And so it means some of your gross claims in that instance is dependent or sensitive to the, say, ZAR, Euro, or USD exchange rates. What it means is that if the Rand weakens against, say, the Euro or the USD, the value of your losses will be higher, and so will be a loss ratio. And that's purely a function of the exchange rates. And the inverse happens. So if the Rand strengthens against these currencies, then your losses, and by inverse, your loss ratio is then lower. Now, what we have considered putting in place is a structured quota share with a sliding scale commission that is also denominated then in the foreign currency, say in the Euro or in the USD. The session would be aligned with the Euro or USD dependent part of claims costs. And obviously what will then happen is if your claims costs are higher, then your commission would be lower. And so you do have an offsetting impact that takes place here between commissions and claims. So yes, even though your loss ratio might be high and your commission or expense ratio, underwriting expense ratio might be high, But overall, when you look at your underwriting results or your underwriting, your technical ratio, technical combined ratio, that should then be almost normalized, or the impact of these exchange rates and the volatility in the exchange rates is removed to a large extent. And so again, this is just an example of what we can do, KPI optimization, and looking at this foreign, your currency effects, which is traditionally, say, non-insurance impact, but more of a financial impact. So this is on the first section, KPI optimization. If we then go to the second section here, which we call regulatory solutions, and obviously we don't just focus on your so-called SAM from a South African point of view, or SCR, so your capital requirements, but we view again capital holistically. So when we talk about managing capital, we talk about capital in all its different formats and requirements. And we all know this is one of the supreme disciplines for an insurance management. Suboptimal deployment of trapped capital or inadequate volatility management can prevent an organization from delivering on promises made to the capital markets. In the worst case, this can result in lowered long-term trust from shareholders and other key stakeholders, and could ultimately negatively affect a company's valuation. So what we have at We'll Agree is a deep and diverse toolbox of reinsurance, which we can offer to cedants with a range of flexible solutions to manage capital from different perspectives. When we talk about different perspectives, I think you can see it here on this slide. It can be either in a distressed environment, so where an entity needs a surrogate or substitute to new capital. This can be driven by a number of factors. So for instance, as we saw during 2019, especially with business interruption claims, where a lot of insurers found themselves having to pay losses in excess of what they had anticipated, and that put to a certain extent some strain on their loss ratios, and also their capital impact, their capitalization. And so they could have needed additional capital from, say, to fund their business operations. You also have situations where there's a change in senior management. Often when senior management changes, the new management wants to implement a new strategy, and they've got new objectives. And so you need capital in order to support the strategic targets of appointed senior management. It could also be to do with growth, and where you need capital to access new capital, say for instance with startups, and we see a lot of startup activity in the insurance industry space, but also if you want to enter into mergers and acquisitions, or for an entity experiencing organic growth, they could need access to trapped capital. And then of course, the third one is really to optimize capital, especially within cross-border groups and so forth, so that you can free up trapped capital, be able to pay dividends, say, to the holding company, and that can then also fund the other objectives of an entity. So we then, instead of having an isolated view on individual targets, we think that insurers should apply a holistic and combined perspective on corporate finance topics and strategy. So here quickly, when we talk about reinsurance solutions being a complementary, meaningful technique of the corporate finance toolkit, I think we all know that from a corporate finance point of view, in order to manage capital and to supplement capital, there's different instruments that entities would consider. So equity is the most common one. So either listed entities that can go into the market and do additional share capital, or within group structures where you request capital, say from a holding company. Subordinated debt is also something that is quite common in the industry. And then of course, there's another cluster which is reinsurance. For us as We'll Agree, I think we believe that reinsurance is actually able to do the same as what some of these traditional capital instruments can do. but we think there's advantages to using reinsurance to fund capital as opposed to, say, equity or debt instruments. And some of these can include the greater flexibility. So in terms of structure and timing, especially owing to the fact that reinsurance solutions in the short-term insurance space and even long-term are renewed annually. And so you've got high flexibility to make changes to these solutions on an ongoing basis. Lower cost of capital is something to consider, especially also if you're talking about your solvency requirements. We know that reinsurance, generally the ultimate cost is less than, say, what equity would attract. I think equity can attract a cost of capital of about 40% of the fair value of the equity instrument, which is quite a significant amount of capital that one needs to hold for such instruments. Also, when we talk about SAM, for instance, reinsurance would generally form part of your tier 1 capital, meaning it can then back your SCR, so your solvency capital requirement and minimum capital requirement, whereas some of these equity structures and your debt, depending on how the instrument is structured, it may not form part of your tier 1 capital, and it could either be tier 2 or tier 3. And so I think these are some of the I think benefits that we think reinsurers has over equity and subordinated debt. If we look at the bottom of the slide here, we look at specifically the capital ratio and the various possibilities and instruments that one can use to steer the capital ratio effectively. We know that the capital ratio is a function of the formula available capital. So for example, own funds divided by your required capital, so your solvency capital requirement in this instance. Reinsurance can be used to steer both available capital. So you see here, especially we talk about retroactive reinsurance products, and in the example, we'll touch on this in a bit more detail, but also you can use reinsurance to steer your SCR as well. So you can use both prospective reinsurance and retroactive reinsurance. Again, in the next slide, we have an example where we will delve on this a little bit more. That slide I won't go into in the benefit of time. So maybe if we focus then specifically on this example, starting again with the formula for reinsurance, like I said, so you've got here reinsurance, and we said this is retrospective reinsurance. So something like a loss portfolio transfer, where you've got long tail business and you've got historic reserves that then a reinsurer can take over from an insurer and pay them a certain amount of money for them. That generally gives an insurance entity a once-off boost in their balance sheet. And we'll look at that specifically in the example below. And you also have prospective reinsurance solutions, which are more common. So you kind of quota share solutions and the like, which we can then use to steer your required capital. So if we look at these graphs here at the bottom, what you'll see on the first one, and in both graphs, we show two things. So you see your solvency ratio without reinsurance, so that's the blue line. And then the orange line here is showing you your solvency ratio, what happens to it when you've got a retrospective solution. So in this example, a loss portfolio transfer. What you see in the first graph is that here you get that once-off benefit, so the once-off improvement in your ratio. However, that improvement or the value that you get, it starts to diminish over time. So really the retrospective solutions are quite useful if you're wanting to get, say, a once-off benefit and you're not necessarily worried on the future, which I think most insurance entities are. In the second example, again here, you see the solvency ratio without reinsurance, and then now you see with reinsurance, and that's the orange line. And what you see in this example, which is now a solvency ratio with a quota share, is that you don't get that large once-off impact, so that immediate effect or the immediate improvement, but what you do get is a more sustained improvement in your ratio and a sustained capital relief over time. What we therefore can do at Munich Re is to structure a reinsurance solution for you in a way that we combine the loss portfolio transfer and a quota share, which would then move your solvency ratio up significantly. So by combining the two, you get that immediate relief plus the sustained relief over time. And so this has been quite it's a useful economic instrument to reduce capital requirements for an insurer. Okay. So then the next example that we have, I won't touch a lot on the numbers and the mechanics of this example, purely because we do believe that this contingent quota share is one of the more common instruments that you find in the markets. And so I think quite a number of people would be familiar with this product. What I will touch on, however, is some of the key features that we put into these kind of solutions at Munich Re, which we believe sets us apart from other reinsurers who offer similar products. I think here the key word is flexibility that we put into these kind of solutions that we offer. So when we talk about flexibility, we talk about flexibility in the session. So what we can do is say you start with a certain minimum session ratio, and then you can adjust that session as often as quarterly. We don't recommend changing it more often than that as required. So if you then say, okay, at a certain point in time, I need to increase the session from 30 to 50, you can do so. And then later you say, actually now I need to reduce it from 50 to 40. These are all things that we can look at. Obviously, we just need to make sure that with the adjustment, it's done on a timely basis and in a manner that makes sense. The second important thing is that we work on so-called triggers. So we, as the reinsurer, would work together with the primary insurer and identify certain triggers. So these would be predefined. And then to say when the trigger event occurs, the insurance then policy will become effective. Even with the trigger, what we can do is say, we give you the option to say, either you can set it and say, when the trigger event occurs, we want the insurance to kick in immediately, or you can say where the trigger event occurs, we want to be given the option to say the trigger event has occurred, would you like the policy to incept? And if you say yes, then at least all the contractual work and so forth has taken place behind the scenes, and the cover can kick in then when we get the green light, say, from our insurer. The other important thing here is around customization. So whatever structure we put in place, we customize to the insurer's needs, and especially items such as your commission structure. So we will work together with the insurer to put in a commission structure that makes sense for their business and not put in a generic commission structure. So I think these are then some of the key features that we put into our products. And I think we've been able to successfully put in a number of these contingent quota shares for our clients that have been effective for them. Okay. Then when we move maybe to the last section that we're looking at this afternoon, it's what we call event-driven solutions. So I think we can all agree that COVID-19 has reminded us that when it comes to large loss events, the sooner that they are identified and the sooner that economic disruptions from such events are resolved, the better and the lower the long-term economic impacts and costs of such events. I think we've seen even with COVID, where certain smaller entities who maybe didn't have sufficient capital said, they had to close down business while they're still waiting for insurance claims to be paid or for certain court cases to be finalized. And so I think for us, it's important, we think it's important for insurers to embed economic risk transfer mechanism within disaster risk management to mitigate some of the longer term consequences of disasters, and especially things like natural catastrophes or by infectious disease outbreaks. Reinsurance solutions, which again we offer at Munich Re, can be efficiently structured to provide immediate and timely response needed when such a natural disaster strikes. We won't touch on it a lot this morning, but another area that we can support organizations in is so-called corporate reorganizations. So especially in the context of acquisitions and disposals of entities, reinsurance can be used to neutralize any unexpected developments that may occur from such transactions, say from legacy exposures and the likes, and therefore free up resources for future investments. And so this increases the chance of a successful reorganization. Like I said, we don't focus a lot on this, on such this morning, but I mean, if you do have M&A activities or you are planning on entering into such transaction, you can always then reach out to us at Munich Re, and we can have a discussion to see perhaps how reinsurance can assist to make the transaction successful for your organization. When we move along and talk a little bit about parametric cover. So again, here, what we've seen is that traditional property or risk cover, so traditional insurance, the losses which may be caused by some of these events, so major hurricanes, earthquakes, and the likes, are not sufficiently covered by, say, these traditional covers. And so a parametric insurance product can be an efficient supplement to such traditional insurance. Here, it's important to note the word supplement. So we don't think that parametric cover on its own will be able to give an insurer sufficient cover that they need for these losses. And so the parametric cover will supplement the traditional reinsurance. And what parametric cover can do is fill the gaps, especially in the case of an emergency. And they are combinable with secondary losses and adaptable for risks where traditional insurance doesn't work. Again, for us, when we talk about parametric solutions, we tend to do trigger-based solutions. And on the right here, you see some of the potential trigger events. So it could be the magnitude of an earthquake, the wind speed, and so forth. And some of the potential issues that can be addressed by this, so increasing demand for new and innovative types of protection, especially protection of non-indemnity losses. And I think we've spoken about this quick post-event liquidity, right? And so when we go and we talk a little bit about, again, the trigger-based coverages that we offer within Munich Re, and what we think is important. I think when we talk about triggers, more especially for parametric solutions, what we want to highlight is that it's very dangerous to just copy a trigger solution for one parametric cover to the next. And so for us at Munich Re, we always make sure the selected trigger meets the objective of the client. We always make sure that our triggers are not general and that our triggers are individually structured regarding the peril, the hazard, liabilities, cost, and protection requirements of the client. I think I've already mentioned at the top when we talk about trigger products that they supplement traditional products and not substitute. And so I think overall with the trigger, you have to get a trade-off because it needs to be simple and clear. So to the client and also the reinsurer, and also make sure that it covers the basic risk. So I think this is important to mention on parametric solutions. The last point I want to touch on parametric solutions, but we don't have a slide on it, is on the so-called IFRS 4 versus IAS 39 or IFRS 9 if you've already adopted IFRS 9. So how do you make sure that such products pass the risk transfer test and that they are accounted for as insurance solutions and not as financial instruments, which is not what most insurers are looking for. I think for us, it's important to mention that there is a way that you can put a trigger in place and to structure it or to structure the policy in such a way that that it meets the risk transfer test. In all the solutions that we've put in place in Munich Re, we know that they have passed the risk transfer test, so we have not had a client coming back to us and saying our auditors had a different view on this, although we can't guarantee what the auditors will say, but we pride ourselves on the fact that we have been able to structure these solutions in such a way that they do pass the risk transfer test. Maybe another important point to mention on these kind of products is that we haven't done something like this in South Africa before, and also in the rest of the African continent yet. And definitely, I think if this is something that is of interest, say, to you, what we would probably need to do is engage with local regulators on such a solution prior to implementing it to make sure that it would be acceptable in your country. So, in conclusion, I think we've said a lot in the last couple of minutes, and I hope I'm still on time. Just to summarize, we at Munich Re, we believe that reinsurance can do more for our clients beyond traditional risk transfer solutions. I think we've spoken that we take a holistic and specific product motivation approach when we offer solutions to the client. We touched a little bit on areas such as optimizing KPIs and managing capital better in all its forms. I think we've spoken that our solutions are unique, so we touched on some of the triggers that we can put in place to make sure that the solutions that we put in place reflect the unique and unconventional client motivations. We can combine different products, so we touched on the LPT and the quota share, so combining retrospective and prospective reinsurance products to cover various types of risks. I think in terms of tailor making, again, that's something that we pride ourselves in, that we don't just do a kind of one size fits all approach, but really we enhance our solutions by non-traditional customizable features. So example could be the right sliding structure commission for your portfolio. Another important thing is that when you partner with us at Munich Re, our clients then benefit not only from our local knowledge and expertise, but also from worldwide experience and knowledge. So we have structured numerous deals locally, but also then we have got the support of our group colleagues who also have structured various deals throughout the world. And whatever the need of an insurer is, we can work together with our group counterparts to make sure that we find the right solution for a client's motivation. And finally, I think one can't talk about such a topic without thinking of unrivaled financial strength and reputation, which is what Munich Re brings to the table. And especially in the difficult economic times we find ourselves in and going into in the future, it's important to partner with a reinsurer who is financially strong and reputable. So I think we really got our AA rating at a group level. And as at June this year, we had just under $30 billion in equity. So that just speaks to the strength of the group overall. I think this is where I end for this morning. So thank you very much for your time, everyone, and for tuning in. I think, Rob, I hand over to you now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a special.
Thank you so much, Pitoko, for sharing those insights. Lots of activity and engagement happening in the chat function as well. So clearly, our attendees enjoyed your presentation. Thank you so much. Just a reminder to all of our attendees, once again, that InsureTalk17, which will be the last one for this year, will take place on the 28th of November. So do be sure to register. We have posted the link in the chat function. So do the right thing and book your seat in advance. All right, over to our last speaker of the day. He has been brought to us by Global Choices. He goes by the name of Rob Kasky. He is a storyteller and is going to be talking to us today about resounding resilience in history. Over to you, Rob.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And I hope more than anything that the insurance professionals on this platform are going to enjoy my little talk. I've been rushing around this morning trying to find somewhere where I could get connected in terms of service provider and no load shedding. And they have all been very patient with me, but welcome. And I hope that you will enjoy the few stories I would like to share with you here this morning. You know, I came back from Antarctica on the 19th of March of last year, exactly 1 week before South Africa's lockdown began, to learn from my wife that all of our work had been cancelled for the remainder of the year. At that stage, we didn't realize it was going to proceed into this year, and the future looked particularly dire. About it for some time, trying hard to panic in those circumstances at dinners, charities, concerts, and who have a little stone path in their garden. And the first flagstone that you step onto when you step off the veranda says, "Don't complain about the darkness if you haven't lit a candle." And those words always had a profound effect on me. And talking retrospectively now, as this lockdown has advanced, I've had time to read and try to assimilate the challenges that this situation has created for us. And I have become firmly of the opinion that mindset is more important than the mind, that it really is the mindset that determines whether you survive, whether you live, whether you can see difficult circumstances through. And I think a lot of people feel that I'm really an historian stories about history. I like to read and other times in our life. And I used to tell stories about the Anglo-Zulu War battlefields, and I still do that. But I've expanded my repertoire to tell stories now about the Arctic and the Antarctic. Indeed, the search for the North Pole and the Northwest Passage and the South Pole and the exploration of Antarctica. And one of the men who features very prominently in the exploration of the Arctic, of Greenland, the Arctic Sea, the North Pole, and so forth, is a remarkable human being called Fridtjof Nansen. Now, Nansen became a neurosurgeon. He's probably better remembered by most for the Nansen passport that he created for displaced persons after the First World War, an effort for which he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. But very importantly, he, as a younger man, was a very good-looking fellow, typical Nordic physique, wide shoulders, incredibly able physically, remarkable skier and gymnast. And he was the first man to ski across the ice cap of Greenland, the largest island on Earth. Greenland pushed more than 3 kilometers under the oceans on account of the weight of the ice cap. And all the previous attempts to cross that ice cap had been begun or initiated off the protected, fairly calm western side of the island. And Nansen said that is the wrong way to do it. What we need to do is start on the stark, inhospitable, difficult side on the eastern side of the island. Then our only way is forward to get to sanctuary, protection and warmth on the western side. The way through that pack ice, it took them more than 30 where they wanted to start their attempt to cross Greenland. But he did it with 4 other men, indicating the physical resolve and indeed the resilience of this remarkable human being. He then, a few years later, 1896 to be precise, wanted to try and use a ship designed by a remarkable Scottish shipbuilder called Colin Archer. And the ship was called the Fram, which in Norwegian means forward. And that ship was shaped and outlined very much like half a boiled egg, with rounded sides that if she be pinched in the ice, she would pop out of the ice, rest over on her side, and then right herself when the ice melted and able to sail away. And he decided with the Arctic Sea and drift the ice would take him over the North Pole. When he realized that the drift was not going to take him over the North Pole, he decided with another remarkable skier called Helmer Johansson to take off with dogs and 2 sleds and 2 kayaks and try and make it to the North Pole. So they took off from the ship and set off with the dogs and the sleds and the kayaks over the unstable Arctic Sea pack ice, heading for the North Pole. It is the most incredible story of human struggle and endeavor, indeed of resilience. Because when they realized that they were not going to get to the North Pole, it's very confusing this, but the drift of the Arctic pack ice actually brought them south or away from the North Pole. Every time they to rest, it must be incredibly demoralizing every morning between the sun and the horizon and realize that you are south of where you were last night when you went to bed and to rest. Well, Johansson and Nansen had the most incredible time. They eventually decided to turn and head back south for Franz Josef Land. At one point, they were dealing with the sleds. They had their little kayaks on the edge of the ice floe, and the kayaks with some wind were blown off the ice floe and blown away from them into the open water. Nansen, realizing that their lives rested on those kayaks, dived into the water with all of his Arctic gear on, swam out to the first kayak. When he got to the kayak, he realized that hypothermia was setting in. He indeed was beginning to shut down on account of the cold and struggled terribly to get into that kayak. He paddled that kayak to the second and brought both back to the edge of the ice floe. Johansson said it was the most incredible gesture and attempt of Nansen's. Well, they would then have to try and warm them up. They had a 2-man sleeping bag. Nansen would undress and try to take on the warmth and the comfort of the body from Johansson, which he was able to do. Johansson said it was remarkable. Although he looked pale in terms of his skin color underneath it all, he looked pretty hale and hearty despite this frigid swim. Well, they never made it all the way back to where they wanted to get to on Franz Josef Land before the winter set in. And they decided to kill as many seals and walruses as they could and literally made a subterranean cavern, a little hole underneath the ice in which to spend 7 months of dreadful Arctic winter weather. And what they did to try and give them some warmth and some protection was they put the seal skins and the walrus skins at the bottom of their little under ice cave. Well, of course, that meat and skin began to rot. The smell and the conditions within that little cavern were absolutely indescribable. On 2 occasions, the little tunnel that they dug for entrance and exit of this ice cavern was blocked with the grunting and the shuffling of a polar bear. On one occasion, Johansson had to creep down that passage and shoot the polar bear that he was absolutely adamant was going to get into that cavern and kill both of them. That polar bear, when they had managed to destroy it, began to regurgitate all of the fat that it had eaten, that the men had deposited in an ice cache outside of that subterranean cavern. Well, they would eventually, as winter turned to autumn, begin to move further south on Franz Josef Land, and would you believe were rescued by the remarkable Jackson expedition, a British expedition that too had overwintered on Franz Josef Land in far better conditions than Nansen and Johansson. And I think that cavern indicates to us just what can be done when survival is paramount, when one has the right mindset to see things through, to get through it, and indeed to survive it well. Isn't it remarkable to consider that Nansen once quoted saying, "I demolish my bridges behind me, then there is no choice but forward only." And I think in this time, as we faced the challenges and the threats of COVID and lockdown in various businesses and guises, that those words indeed are very special. Robert Falcon Scott a man you probably have heard much about, the blue-eyed boy from Britain, the Royal Naval officer who was destined or hoped by Britain would get to the South Pole first, is a man who failed to prepare properly in terms of learning to ski, learning properly to use the horses that they took to Antarctica, and most importantly, did not master the handling and the driving of dogs. You know, the Scandinavians always said for polar travel, dogs, 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 because a good overland skier moves at about the same pace as a good team of dogs, pulling a sled roughly 600 to 700 pounds. And when the dogs run out of steam, you can indeed destroy them and feed them to the other dogs and indeed to the men. And Robert Falcon Scott, with a party of 4, had managed to drag a sled 880 miles from Cape Evans and Cape Ross all the way to the South Pole on the polar plateau, which is 10,000 feet above sea level. It might be worth reminding all of you fine viewers that Antarctica is the highest, driest, coldest, windiest continent on Earth. Mountains there rising up to 15,000 feet above sea level. Ice that is 4,000 meters, 4 kilometers deep. The coldest recorded temperature at one of the Russian bases, minus 92 degrees centigrade. It is an awesome place. Well, do you know that Scott and his companions had dragged a sled to the South Pole? Let's consider this for a moment. The British were obsessed by a process or an activity called man-hauling, where men are traced together in traces, pulling a sled in unison. And they would pull that sled. When they stopped to rest, the sled runners would freeze to the ice and they'd have to jerk it in unison to get it moving again to move forward. As a result, they hardly stopped during the day to eat or to drink. So dehydration sets in, despite the temperatures, sweating inside of your gear, the sweat freezing on your garments. Tim Noakes reckons that to pull a sled in Antarctica requires around 8,000 calories of nutrition per day. The food that they had at that time was called pemmican, largely a mixture of dry meat and dry fat that you mix with water into a soup type goulash or stew, producing no more than 4 or 4,500 calories per day. So what happens? Fat goes first, then muscle, eventually organ failure begins along with brain failure. I want you to imagine the moment for those men when, on the 16th of January of 1912, Henry Birdie Bowers, called Birdie Bowers because he had a large protuberance for a nose, a bit like a bird's beak, hence the nickname Birdie, 28 years of age, impressive chest measurement, only 5'2" in height, reddish hair, deeply religious, very close relationship with his mother, indomitable enthusiasm, immune to heat and cold in equal measure. He looked out across the ice and he saw something. He thought to himself. The following day, their worst fears were realized. There at the South Pole, 90 degrees south, that point on which our great globe rotates, stood a little black silken emergency 2-man Norwegian tent. A bamboo pole on which fluttered the Norwegian flag. Dogs, tracks everywhere, an upturned sled, and Scott wrote, "Great God, this is an awful place. And to have reached it without the reward of priority, all the daydreams must go now, and we must make our way back." His footnote reads, "Can we do it?" 880 miles lay ahead of them, pulling that sled back to their hut at Cape Evans and Cape Ross. The authors suggest that these men died psychologically beaten. Shall stick it out to the end. Called Edgar Taft Evans, dreaming of glory, being first to the pole, glory shattered, being beaten by the Norwegians by a margin of 34 days. Stopped talking. He got gangrene in a hand, cut by a chisel doing some woodwork, reducing the sled runners of the sled from 12 feet to 10 feet, that they be easier to pull on the ice. His face eventually became a great suppurating mass of pus and frostbite. He fell in a small crevasse and hit his head badly. Everyone thought it wasn't too serious, but there's no doubt that there was some hemorrhaging on the brain. And on the 17th of February of 1912, at the bottom of the great Transantarctic Mountains, Edgar Taff Evans died. As Scott records in his journal, my great friend Evans died peacefully at midnight. The remaining four continue pulling that sled. Volcanic winds in Antarctica push loose ice and snow ahead of them, creating snow ridges with a windward side and a leeward side. You've got to maneuver your sled over those ridges, which can be as close together as 40 yards. One of the men with Scott's party was a remarkable officer called Lawrence Edward Grace Oates. Everyone called him the soldier. He was part of the Inniskilling Dragoons. Do you know that fighting in this country, South Africa, in 1901 against the Boers, in an ambush situation down near Aberdeen in the Karoo, he had been shot in the left thigh, breaking his femur. Well, his leg recovered well enough, but left the left leg slightly shorter than the right, which I think for Scott was a very strange choice of party member for the Polar Party. And you may or may not know that with scurvy and gangrene, the first thing that happens is that old scar tissue begins to dissolve. So the thigh became gangrenous. Both feet became incredibly frostbitten and black. And maybe I need to remind you, in terms of our theme about resilience and grit, that this soldier, this officer, had a conversation once with her Ponting, the photographer, where the question was posed, condition imperiled the safety of his comrades. And Oates, without hesitation, said suicide. And you have to have access to the firearm or to the morphine and opium in the medicine chest to take your own life, to spare the lives of your comrades. He begged them to allow him to take his own life. They refused. He cut his sleeping bag from end to end, that it'd be easier to get into, but in that condition won't keep you warm. He refused to take off his boots because of the pain involved in putting them back on. Would you believe on the 16th of March of 1912, they went to bed, Oates praying that he would not wake. But he awoke. There was a howling blizzard outside their dark green tent. And Oates got up and said to his comrades, I'm just going outside and I may be some time. They knew that he was walking to his death to give them a chance for life. They were too exhausted and weak to stop him. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, that his body is never been found, and it was his 32nd birthday. Remaining to the 21st of March of 1912, when the blizzard marooned them in their dark green tent, they were only 11 miles, 17 kilometers from One Ton Depot, a depot of food and fuel and supplies that should have been placed 2.5 degrees out on the ice. A degree of 60 miles, 2.5 degrees, 150 miles. Because of the sledging conditions that season, poor weather, and the very poor performance of the motor sledges, these petrol engine motor sledges pulling loads along with Caterpillar-like tracks, that depot had been placed only 2 degrees out on the ice, 120 miles. Might not sound like much. They never made it. Those 3 men were finally found in November of 1912, 8 months after their death, having died only 11 miles from One Ton Depot. And it's at this point that I might like to introduce the notion, perhaps, of intuition. I think that so many of us modern folk have lost touch with our intuition. That little pineal gland that sits between the lobes of the brain, called the pineal gland on account of looking like a pine cone, what some people call their third eye, their gut instinct. adversely affected by chlorochemicals. But I've often wondered whether the other men in the party did not realize in that sledging season of 1911 that they might rue the day that that depot was not placed out 2.5 degrees, 150 miles out from the hut, rather than 120 miles out from the hut. Isn't it interesting that the Norwegians with the dogs in the same weather, in similar conditions, 350 miles off to the west of Scott's party, had placed their southernmost depot 175 miles further out on the ice towards the South Pole. Bearing in mind that the Norwegians had 820 miles to get to the pole, the Brits 880 miles, 175 miles difference in terms of the food and fuel depots is quite significant, in my opinion. Well, Scott, when Norwegian Roald Amundsen, who beat him to the pole, learned of his death, he sat up. He was apparently having a hot bath, and he said, Scott wins regardless, knowing that Scott would be a greater hero in Britain dead than he would ever have been he come back alive, having got to the pole. And then I want to change our theme. When I think of persistence and I think of grit, imagine a man working in Blantyre, poor boy, from age 10 in a mill, with all the belts running above, the incredible heat and the steam to keep the threads from breaking. And whilst he's working on the mill and tending his machine, he's got notebooks on his thigh, beginning to study other subjects, a man who eventually would graduate as a doctor quite early in life and come out to South Africa filled with medical zeal and, of course, Christian zeal, wanting to spread the word of the Christian people from the London Missionary Society to those all over Africa. He ends up joining up with Robert Moffat at Kuruman and the Moffat family. Now, I don't know how many of you South Africans have been to Moffat's mission at Kuruman. It's a staggering place and well worth visiting. And the piece about it all that I love most as a speaker is that Robert Moffat built a church in a T shape, wattle and daub, with a thatch roof, with a cow dung floor, with the of that church without acoustic. It was a triumph. Well, Livingston was to try and assist with a man-eating lion. Not much experience as a hunter. He wounded the lion, and the lion grabbed him by the shoulder and apparently shook him like a terrier. He wasn't a big man. And he was nursed back to health by the Moffats, particularly their daughter, Mary. They two fell in love, and he eventually married Mary. I wonder if she rued the day having married this quite fanatical missionary and doctor who was so opposed to the scourge of slavery in Africa, a man who became obsessed with the source of the Nile, a man who was violently pitted against the Arab slave traders and all that they were doing in Africa, and most importantly, wanted to open the African continent up to travel. A man who traveled up the Zambezi until the rapids, taking their mighty boat apart and carrying it over the rapids, trying to get, oh no. I'm sorry, everyone's saying that my Wi-Fi is so unstable that people are battling to follow.
We do apologize about that. We seem to be having some technical glitches with Rob. It really is a pity because that story really was interesting. We will do our best to get that recording to our attendees. And just like that, we have reached the end of today's session. We do hope that you have all thoroughly enjoyed the session and the engagements that took place today. A huge thank you once again to our headline sponsor for today's session, Munich Re. A huge thank you to you, as well as our event partners, Global Choices, the IISA, as well as Cover Magazine. A thank you to all of our speakers today for sharing your insights and availing yourselves. We thoroughly enjoyed all of the engagements today. And then, of course, all of our attendees for your continued support of InsureTalk throughout the year. We do thank you and appreciate for your continued support. I remind once again that InsureTalk17, which will be the last one for this year, will take place on the 28th of November. So do be sure to register. We have posted the registration link in the chat. And as I do, I'm going to leave you with a short quote. The best way to predict the future is to create it. And that is by Abraham Lincoln. I thought that was apt given today's theme. From myself, Nontusugo Mhlungu, and the CN&CO events team, it's been an absolute pleasure. Do stay safe, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and see you at InsureTalk18.